When a young boy has a very strange night, he's left wondering to this day what actually happened the night the sky turned green. And then we take another look at the law of attraction. However, this time we're going to focus on the darkness that sometimes may come as a result. Is it possible when you're trying to reshape the universe to suit your mind can open dark doorways? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, so first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for Oracle Relationship. Woohoo, yeah, haha, yeah, flying around, got little fairy wings, flying around Dead Rabbit Radio. Make sure not to clap her as she's flying around. Oracle made a donation during our Thanksgiving live stream, and that is why she is going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through live streams or the merch store or the Patreon, I totally understand. I really, really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Oracle Relationship. Let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you a little steam shovel and a little conductor's cap. Everyone climb on board the Carpenter caboose as Oracle chugs us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way out to a little boy's house. Chugga. Whoa, whoa. Chugging on down the track. We're about to meet this kid. We don't have his real name. Let's call him Philip. Philip, he's 4. He's a 4-year-old boy. Mommy, Daddy, look what I found, Philip says. And Dad's like, what's going on over there, Phil? What's going on? And Philip goes, Daddy, look at the bug. Look at that big old bug. You know, I don't have kids, but I'm sure they're constantly, trying to get your attention. I'm sure kids are constantly complaining about stuff, right? So, Philip's dad's sitting there, Daddy, there's a beetle in the house. It's a big beetle. And Dad's probably is a pretty big beetle. But, I'm reading the newspaper, son. I'm reading all this crazy news. Eventually, though, Dad gets up. Philip's dad walks over there, and sure enough, Philip is pointing at this beetle that is so big, it's the size of a man's hand. Phil said that his dad picked the beetle up and takes it outside. And it's interesting, when Philip posted this online, he actually had takes it outside in air quotes, as if Philip doesn't know if that's exactly what happened. Like the father said, I'm going to take it outside, and then picked it up and walked away. I think even because Philip's an adult posting this now, decades later, I don't know if he actually knows that his dad took it outside or even was going to do that. And that's kind of the start of the mysterious events that's going to happen. I mean, let's also not shrug off the idea of a beetle the size of a man's hand. Now, while I'm sure that there are bugs that are as big as a dude's hand, which is what? Like, my hand is 8 inches long from the palm to the finger. I'm just eyeballing it. I don't have a ruler. But, yeah, probably 8 inches long, maybe bigger, maybe 12 inches long. You're like, Jason, you're not an orangutan. Your hands are not as big as your feet. Well, if I have a size 12 foot, yeah, I'd say I'm measuring my hand against my foot. I'd probably say I have an 8-inch hand from wrist to middle finger all the way to the tip. Pretty big beetle. Now, I'm sure that there are beetles and bugs out there this size in the Amazon, maybe in Australia. Crikey, mate. That's a big beetle. But they're not normal. I would argue that most beetles aren't 8 inches long. And he didn't say how big it was, like wide it was, but I'm assuming it is as long and as wide as a man's hand. You may go, well, Jason, the Madagascar stick bug is found all over the United States. But originally was from Madagascar. It's really long. It's a big old stick. I don't think that's what he's talking about. That's not really that notable. Like if it's skinny, if it's a skinny thing, like who cares, right? You're like, oh man, you're all sitting there, you're all super skinny. You're like, Jason, I thought we were friends. No, skinny humans are fine. Like a skinny bug, if I saw a skinny bug that was like, if it was like a foot long, I probably wouldn't even mention it. You come over to my house, you all sit down, you're like, oh, it's a pretty nice place. All of a sudden, you're covered in stink bugs. Ah! And I was like, yeah, I didn't warn you about the foot-long stick bugs, because why? They're just so skinny, they're all crawling into your mouth, crawling up your nose. A big beetle. Philip finds a big beetle in his house. Later that night, Philip is getting ready to go to bed. Oh, Mommy, Daddy, do I have to? I'm still wide awake. I'm still petrified. Are there more beetles around? Oh no, I'm too scared to go to bed. Parents are like, yeah, son, you gotta go to bed. It's bedtime. Philip's laying in his bed. His bedroom door's open so he can look out into the hallway. He's trying to fall asleep. When all of a sudden, he's seen blasts of flames shooting down the hallway. Terrifies him. Terrifies him, right? He jumps out of bed and he's like, screw this, right? The beetle was already bad enough. Now the house may be on fire, but it's weird how it's like this burst of flames. I'm going to run to my parents' room. I'm going to sleep with them tonight. And you figure like he probably had to time it too. He's like, oh, little legs don't fail me now. 4-year-olds can't run for nothing. He's standing there at his bedroom and he's like, I don't want to be like halfway down this hallway and then get burnt alive. I'm trying to look, see where the flames are. But he does eventually get to his parents. I don't know if he had to time it like a game of Dragon's Lair, but eventually he does go to his parents' bedroom. He's terrified. He's like, Mommy, Daddy, please let me sleep with you. It's so scary. The flames and the beetle. And parents are like, oh, okay, Philip, yeah. As the house is slowly filling up with smoke, they're like, oh, you and your imagination. Just go to bed, Philip. The parents say, yeah, Philip, you can sleep with us, because obviously they're not concerned about flames. There are no flames. The parents are asleep. Philip's laying in bed there between them. And he's looking up at the ceiling of their room. And all of a sudden, he watches the ceiling peel back. Like a great invisible force is simply ripping the roof off of a gingerbread house. He's watching, not just their ceiling, but the roof itself being peeled back, and now he can look up and see the night sky above this house, but it's not the black night sky and ebony sea full of sparkling diamonds that we call stars. No, that's not what he's seeing. He sees a dark green sky reaching out forever above him. It's raining. It's raining. This dark green sky that the house is now exposed to is allowing the rain to come in, and he feels the wet raindrops splash across his face. His parents are asleep. They're not experiencing any of this, but Philip is experiencing all of it. He's looking around the bedroom. And, like a lot of people's bedrooms, there's tchotchkes and trinkets and figurines on dressers and desks and windowsills. And he's watching these little tchotchkes move. He's watching them move. He says to this day what he remembers the most. He distinctly remembers there was a clay trinket of a turtle. This clay turtle was sitting there, and it began to move its neck around. The clay turtle is kind of looking around, moving its neck. The house, the entire house at this point, is rocking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, with such a rhythmic motion that Philip, in the moment, truly believed that the house was actually now on the back of a giant who was walking across the world. Giant strides taking it across this alien landscape. Philip said, at some point he must have fallen asleep, and he woke up and everything was back to normal. The house had a roof. The clay ceramic turtle was back in its normal position. All the trinkets were. The bed and the carpet weren't soaked with rainwater. No flames reaching out from the hallway. No giant beetle. He wakes up the next morning and everything is completely normal. But what he notes, he said that he was obviously very panicked and terrified by the events of the night before. And he told his parents about it. He told his parents, "Mom, Dad, you won't believe what happened. Right when you went to bed, the roof fell off, and then the giant showed up, and you're just like drinking your coffee. You're like, come on, man, it's like 6:30 in the morning. Give it a rest, kid." No, and the clay turtle was looking at me. He moved his head, Daddy. He moved his neck. He said his parents, obviously, they didn't see any of it. Their 4-year-old son is talking about all of this absolutely bonkers stuff. They are like, "Well, son, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure we still have a roof. I'm pretty sure that the sky is a normal color and there aren't any giants anywhere near." But he said even though his parents, he's telling this fantabulous story, even though his parents didn't necessarily believe the story, as he kept talking, as he kept going on and on about this, his parents began to believe that something happened. Very interesting. He goes, listen, I was only 4 years old. Of course, I was given to flights of fancy like all children. But because my parents knew me very well, and they knew how I acted and how I spoke normally, like on a normal non-Beetle day, he said, when I talked about this and I kept talking about it, my parents started to really believe that something had happened that night. They didn't think it was necessarily those things, or maybe they did. It wasn't necessarily that they didn't believe that any of it happened. I think they were under the idea that something traumatic happened to him the night before. They just couldn't figure out what, because what he was describing was so fantastic. But it did seem very out of character for him to be acting the way that he was and talking the way that he was. The parents were concerned that something might have happened. Super interesting story. If you look at it, there's really two different levels. One is a child's overactive imagination. You could even just say the kid was dreaming. But it's kind of interesting that the story starts before he even gets to bed. It's the beetle that starts everything off, the giant beetle. And when he says my dad, quote unquote, took it outside, it is almost like he doesn't believe that his dad took care of it. Like, was his dad in some way a part of this conspiracy? You could look at it that way. You could also look at it that it's a euphemism for my dad just smashed it. My dad just took it to the kitchen, stepped on it, threw it in the garbage can. Just like when parents say, "Oh, your dog's upstate at a farm somewhere," you learn that that means they blew its brains out in a gully. You also, though, could say, it's funny because the beetle imagery, here, I'll put all my cards on the table. I'm thinking alien abduction. The imagery is so abstract. Adult humans already have a really hard time dealing with alien abductions. They have a really, really hard time mentally with waking up mid-abduction, or the brain erasure technology doesn't work. Or it does work, but it starts to wear off for whatever reason, they have a really hard time. A lot of times alien abduction stories aren't as literal as, I was walking around my house, next thing you know, I was on this spacecraft, there were a bunch of gray aliens surrounding me, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Sometimes there is this bizarre imagery in it, and with hypnosis, you may be able to uncover more literal truths. The giant beetle could have actually been him as a 4-year-old walking down the hallway and seeing a gray alien, or seeing some sort of insectoid alien. And that's how his mind read it, was this giant beetle that he needed his dad's help to take care of. But it's already either the start of the abduction or their mid-abduction, and the dad, he's completely hypnotized. They don't remember any of this. From the giant beetle, right? Could be a 4-year-old seeing something they don't understand and trying to figure out an earthly way to describe it. To the flames shooting down the hallway, the roof being peeled back, the entire house rocking back and forth. All of that stuff could be his brain, his child brain, trying to wrap its head around being abducted by an alien, and also the brain erasing technology of the aliens didn't perfectly work on him. So you have a traumatic experience that you're remembering half of, plus you're only 4 years old. You really only have 4 years of memories and experiences to try to view, to try to recognize what you're seeing. And imagine if you erased half of it. So now you are only remembering half of it, and there's really not a language to put it in. So your brain goes, the house is rocking back and forth. That was a sensation of being abducted. Like all of the weird thing that's going on. That's what I think it might have been. But what's interesting too, when we look at the world of the paranormal, it could have been a literal telling of something. This house could have teetered in just that night because he didn't experience anything else like that. But for whatever reason, a once in a million year alignment. We talked about that on a recent episode. We don't know how much of this paranormal stuff could be running in cycles that is so vast we can't put together the pattern. But for one moment in time, this house teetered on the edge of realities. And it was a more literal interpretation. There were ethereal flames shooting down the hallway. The house was moving. The trinkets in the bedroom were coming to life. So it's kind of a cool story because you can look at it both those ways. The skeptical answer is he's just a 4-year-old kid. What does he know? And none of it happened. It was just his imagination. And now as an adult, he's just continuing to imagine more and kind of like embellish past memories. That would be the skeptic's answer. But I like my answer better, right? I like the alien answer, and I like the interdimensional answer. The skeptic answer, if you listen to the early episodes of the podcast, I did a lot of skeptical answers those first 50, 100 episodes. And I realized I'm just kind of saying the same thing over and over again. I go, or it's made up. I mean, yeah, I think all of this stuff you can answer that. I just got tired of saying it. It's like, the audience is smart enough to know there's always option C, that it's made up or it's mistaken. I was like, you guys are smart enough. I don't need to keep pointing that out. But the alien or the interdimensional theories are definitely more fun. And to this day, he's like, I still don't know what happened. Like, it's an absolutely terrifying event. It would be a terrifying event for anyone, this series of events, for an adult to go through. But for a 4-year-old, and then to wake up and no one else have experienced it, it could really be mind-bending for sure. Oracle relationships. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. We're leaving behind this little boy's house. All these years later, he's still no closer to an answer. Hopefully he'll find it soon. I have really no advice to give him. It's quite a bizarre story. Oracle relationships. Okay, Oracle relationship. Let's hop on board this Carpenter Copter. Why don't you go ahead and fly us all the... Okay. Oracle relationship. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. Oracle relationship, I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter copter. We're leaving behind this little boy's house. All these years later, he still has no idea what happened that night. Quite a bizarre story. We're leaving behind this little boy's house. What do you fly us all the way out to? The edge of reality. Oracle relationship, I chose her to pilot us around on this episode, not only because she made a donation during the Thanksgiving live stream, but also because I know she's a fan of the law of attraction. I know that that's something that she really likes. I know a lot of you, I get a lot of emails about it. Probably that's the most emailed topic that I get, is questions about the law of attraction and how people have been doing it. How people, do I have any tips? That's kind of why I did that last episode, was some of the tips that I use in my personal relationship with the law of attraction. I'll put that episode in the show notes if you didn't hear it. But this time we're going to focus on the negative side of the law of attraction. We're going to take a look at the stories of two people who believe the law of attraction actually ruined their lives. And so the question is can it do that? Because I'm very about the positive side of the law of attraction, and most authors who have written about this are also about the positive side of it, whether it's Wallace, Wattles, or Neville Goddard, or I forgot who wrote The Secret, Rhodes something. It's very rare when you find a lot of literature talking about what happens when the law of attraction goes bad. Can you manifest horrible things into your life? Now, for me, and for a lot of people who work with the law of attraction, the short answer is not really, with an asterisk. So I guess there really isn't a short answer. The way that it's usually talked about is this. You can, if you have negative thoughts, if you go, I'm always broke, I never have any money, I'm always broke, nothing good ever happens to me, you can create a negative feedback loop, whether you practice the law of attraction or not, which can cause more negativity. If you're constantly thinking about how unfair life is, two things are going to happen. One, if the law of attraction is a real thing, you will basically attract more unluckiness. But there's an even more important part that I think happens to everyone, whether or not they believe in the law of attraction, is that even when good things happen to you, you will see them in a bad light. For example, let's say you're involved in a class action lawsuit. You get an email saying, oh, you bought this video game on this particular site, and it turns out they were overcharging you, and just click submit on this email, you'll be part of this class action lawsuit. So you click submit, you don't even think about it. 2 years later, you get a check for $1,000. People who are already stuck in a negative feedback loop, they will look at that $1,000 and go, great. Now half of it's going to go in taxes. Oh my God, this is actually even worse. It's going to bump me up into another tax bracket. Oh man, this $1,000 is actually making my life worse than it was before I opened the mail. And you know people like that. I know people like that. Maybe you're a person like that. It's a really hard way to live. Even when good things happen, you see the negative side of them. Think about it this way, too. Here's another example. I buy 2 cartons of ice cream on accident. I thought that I was only getting one. It turns out that I have 2 cartons of vanilla ice cream. I can't even put both of them in my fridge. So I go to my friend and go, hey, I got this free vanilla ice cream. You can have it if you want. And you take the ice cream and then complain about it. What? It's just vanilla. Gross. Oh, I hate this brand. Dreyer's ice cream? Boo. Oh, and it's so cold. It hurts my hands as I'm holding it. Oh, thanks. Not only am I going to be more reluctant to give me personally, give that person a present in the future, because I was like, dude, it's free ice cream. You didn't have to take it. But in a way, the universe will also be more reluctant to give you things because you don't have gratitude. When you talk about the law of attraction, a big part of it that a lot of people leave out is gratitude. That's part of the energy you're throwing out into the universe. And it's something that I see missing from a lot of mainstream law of attraction websites. They neglect gratitude. Thankful for the things that you have. The universe is an unfeeling organism in the law of attraction world. It's just this formless mass that is constantly creating things. But if it's giving you things and you're not thankful for them, or if you're outright hostile towards them, I compare it to this. The law of attraction, the universe, this formless void is a lot like the YouTube algorithm. It gives you what it knows you want and what it thinks you want. But if it's starting to get signs that you don't want to watch those particular videos, you don't interact with that particular content, the YouTube algorithm is going to stop giving it to you. And the universe will stop replying in kind. How we interact on YouTube sets the stage for the videos that I'm going to get in the next couple of days, really, sometimes even the next couple of minutes. It finds that I like a particular type of content creator, and I'm watching the full video and I'm interacting with it, thumbs up, typing in a comment, it's going to go, oh, he likes this stuff. He's interacting with it. Even if they're giving a thumbs down, he's interacting with it. He's engaged. The universe is like that. If it's giving you gifts and you're not interacting with them, you're actually bemoaning the fact that they're there, it's going to stop giving you those gifts. Just like if YouTube keeps sending you videos and you click off within 30 seconds of them, it's going to stop showing you that stuff. So that's where you start to get people who are in a negative feedback loop and they start having negative problems. However, I think all of that stuff can happen. I do not think you can law of attraction yourself into cancer. I don't think you can law of attraction a close family member dying. I think if you are constantly worried about the health of your children and then one of your children gets a terrible disease, that's not your fault. I don't think you manifested that. I don't think that if you are an 8-year-old boy in South Sudan and a militia group comes in and destroys your entire community and makes you personally kill your parents, and then for the next 3 years you're running around with an AK-47 fighting this war until eventually you take a bullet in the spleen and bleed out in the middle of this nighttime raid at the age of 12, I do not think you manifested that. I don't think that that kid manifested that existence. That's a very common argument against the law of attraction. That why would someone manifest that? Are you telling me the universe? You're telling me that that little boy asked the universe to live and die in such a horrific way? It's not an exaggeration. That actually is an argument a lot of people use against the law of attraction. Let's take a look here at two people who believe that they actually are worse off now because of the law of attraction. And I think that we honestly, what I'm going to talk about may disagree with a lot of stuff I said. So this is kind of a compare and contrast. And by the end of it, you may agree with my opinion that you can't law of attraction anything that's too horrible. But maybe you disagree, and that's fair. There's a lot of debate to be had on really any topic we cover on the show. First off, let us meet a young man. We're going to call him Barry. Now, Barry, back in 2018, is at a very pivotal moment in his life. Because he has been practicing the law of attraction. He's been using it to reshape his world into a positive way. And he first off tells us, he goes, I've read every book there is on law of attraction. He read The Secret, Ask and It Is Given is another book multiple times. He read As a Man Thinketh. He's read and watched a lot of content from Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker. He's read Think and Grow Rich twice. He's read The Power of Positive Thinking, as well as spending time consuming a lot of articles on law of attraction and in a lot of these law of attraction communities. I don't want to nitpick throughout this, but I do want to say, if you wanted to learn how to do woodworking, and I gave you a book on woodworking, do you think you'd be able to build me a table? With the appropriate tools using that book, do you think you could assemble a table? Now, let me give you 10 different books on woodworking from 10 different authors that are written in different decades. And I gave you all 10 books, and I said, I want you to read all of these 10 books and build me a table. Do you think it would make it easier or harder to build that table? You could say, well, 10 books has more information than just one book. But we're looking at 10 different authors, 10 different techniques, 10 different time periods that these books are being written in. I always suggest, if you're looking at the law of attraction, pick a book or two and read those. Study those. Don't get every single book on law of attraction, because there are enough differences between them. Some of them will counteract each other. Some of them will say one thing, and some of them will say, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. Find something, and I get it, right? Because this is one of those things where you go, Jason, I'm not building a table. I can actually see the progress of a table and see if it works. Law of attraction can take time. But some books say, do not set a time limit. Set your goals, practice gratitude, believe that you already have attained the things that you want, and then just set it aside. Same thing when you go to a restaurant and you place your order. You don't spend the rest of the time going, where's my food, where's my food, where's my food, where's my food. You have faith in the waitstaff that they're going to bring your food in an appropriate amount of time. Other people say, no, you have to write down a dollar amount and you have to write down a time. You have to say 6 months from now, I will have blank. Because if you don't give a time limit, it could happen on your deathbed. Two completely different theories on how it works. So when you read all these books, of course it's going to cause chaos. It's actually going to work against you. But Jason, how do I know which books to read, which communities to be a part of? That's an individual journey. The one thing I've seen about the law of attraction is that different people, the end result, the end theory is the same. You're putting your subconscious to work, believing in things that aren't true right now. But how you go about it, all these tips and techniques, it's a lot different. It's the same thing. If you wanted to be a boxer, you could go to 10 different trainers who are going to have 10 different techniques. At the end of the day, you will be able to box, but you might get along with one trainer and you might be able to just like sit and talk and figure everything out. Another trainer you don't get along with. It doesn't make any sense because you just don't gel on that level. So I recommend taking a look at a couple different authors. You can even read their Wikipedia pages or something and find out about them and go, I actually believe in that core concept. I will consume that author's books. But don't read all of them. It's not going to help. Definitely didn't help this guy. Because in 2018, he goes, here's the thing. I was thinking so positively that other people really enjoyed my company. People would tell him, wow, you being so positive is actually helping me be more positive. Like, you're an inspiration. You're always looking on the bright side of things. You're always got, like, okay, things aren't working out right now, but I know right around the corner, like, you're just an optimist. And it was making other people around him happy. People would say, you make me happy. I like hanging out with you because you have such a positive attitude. However, in 2018, after all this time studying the law of attraction from all these different books, and then being such a positive person, he was uplifting those around him. He attempted suicide. He attempted to kill himself because he said, I was so lonely. I was so lonely and I was so depressed, and the law of attraction was making things so much worse for me that I just couldn't do it anymore. So he tried to kill himself. And luckily, it was unsuccessful. But he still now is saying what would happen was the reason why he believes the law of attraction was a main contributor to his suicide attempt is he goes, my life was not great, but I would, in my mind, using the law of attraction, be living a great life. And when the two realities collided, it was so jarring for him that it would thrust him deeper into a depression. His dream life and his real life could not coexist in his mind. He says, quote, I was seeing signs from the law of attraction and following the signs, but the signs always led me to depression and disappointment, unquote. That's very interesting because that's not a key component of the law of attraction, at least that I've come across. There's no mystical code. There's not really a thing where if you want to be a famous author, that one day you're scrolling through the television and you see an interview with an author that you share a name with. And that means, oh, I'm supposed to write today. Or today I send my stories out to the editors on my dream list. That's really not a thing. The signs and the symbols, it establishes a bit more of a, I don't want to say mystical because it all feels like that in a way. But you know what I mean? A more, it adds another layer to it that's not there, at least not in what I've read. And a lot of law of attraction people say, oh, there's nothing mystical about it. It's actually a science. You do it and it'll happen. It's the same thing as putting a base and a compound together. Well, you go, okay, well, he's talking about seeing signs and symbols and following them, and that led to depression. Where's he getting that from? Here's another quote from what he wrote online. When he's reaching out, when he's in this moment when he can't figure out why the law of attraction isn't working, or why it's actually making his life worse, he reaches out for help. But who does he call out to? Who's he reaching out for help? It's very interesting what he wrote here. He said, quote, I called on God, Jehovah, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Satan, friends, family, Eric Thomas. I was like, who's that guy? Right? It's kind of a crazy list to be in. Isn't that the guy who owns Wendy's? Eric Thomas is a motivational speaker. So again, same thing with going back to the books, right? He's looking at all these different theories, and when he's in need of spiritual help, he calls out to everybody, including Satan. So it's kind of this mishmash worldview about what's going on. The law of attraction, it's a very direct, doesn't always happen the way you want it to. I'll say that. It may not happen in the time you want it to, or does it? Because some people say you have to have a time period. But it's very direct. You do X and Y will happen. The question is, how perfect does X have to be, and how soon and in what way does Y happen? You don't have to call out to Satan to try to get help. But really, I think also he's just really suffering at this point. He's looking for any sort of help that he can get. But he does say in his writings here, he said, if everything in the world happens by man's thoughts and feelings and beliefs, quote, then why the hell were the signs leading me to destruction? Would you tell the hungry humans in Africa and the children that are under Middle Eastern wars to have positive thinking to save themselves? Is that God's will? The source? Where the hell is God? Where? Come on, man. Where are you at? Unquote. That's a very common argument in the law of attraction. I think it's a pretty common argument in any religion. But before he goes to that, he says, what about the signs that were leading me to destruction? Did I create those signs? Did I have this path that I set on? It sounds like there's something more going on here than the law of attraction not working for him. It does seem like he is suffering in many ways, and I'm not trying to make light of the subject at all. He did write the word where very long as if he was screaming it. And, I feel for him. I'm sure before he even started practicing the law of attraction, he was struggling with some stuff. And it's super interesting, right? Because remember, he was lifting up everybody around him. Suffering in silence, suffering from loneliness and depression in silence, it is a soul killer. Don't get it twisted. Like, it can absolutely devastate. And sometimes the happiest people can hide the heaviest tears, for sure. But it's interesting to think that he wasn't getting what he wanted, but he was making everyone else around him feel better about themselves. So it's almost like he was halfway there. The fact that other people enjoyed his company and they weren't abusing him, they weren't around him because he was giving them money or buying them gifts or anything like that. It was just being around him. And it's interesting because he writes it out and he goes, everyone liked being around me, but I was lonely. He's halfway there. He's making everyone else positive. We need to lift him up, which makes me think that it could be a chemical depression. It could be environmental depression. It could be stuff that's going on in his life, but it's very interesting. I'm not saying that it's okay if you're depressed if everyone else around you's happy. We want everyone to be up at that base level. And the people around him are even higher than a base level. They were truly happy. I do think this is interesting, though. He does say, well, and he does actually say that he was diagnosed with unipolar depression. I hadn't heard that term before, but it's clinical depression. So he was suffering from that. So even if you are practicing the law of attraction, we've talked about it a lot this week. If you believe in these mystical elements controlling mankind, you still need to take your medicine. If you have a clinical diagnosis for depression, and the doctor has therapy or medicine for that, you can still believe in spirits. You can still follow these paths. But you also got to treat the underlying illness. I think a lot of people feel like it's one or the other. It's all or nothing. But he does say this, and again, this kind of might state to his mental state. He did say that he used to listen to motivational speeches all day long. And while he was doing that, he was constantly thinking, processing through the law of attraction, trying to go through the steps of those 10 books plus that he read, as well as helping others and motivating people around him. He says, quote, people used to tell me I make them happy due to my positivity when they interact with me, unquote. He said that much earlier in this post. So spending all day long on this stuff, that's not healthy either. That's not healthy. Spending all day long on really any subject outside of maybe your work or in your schooling is fine. But spending all day long focusing on the law of attraction, that's super not healthy. That can 100%, I don't think it'll make you suicidal, but that could, imagine if you spent 8 hours a day believing that outside your door is a verdant garden, and then you go outside your door, there's no garden. I could definitely see that colliding. Most people who do law of attraction, a couple minutes a day. Because you're supposed to believe that you already have it anyways. You do not sit there and go, I have a couch, and then walk out and make sure your couch is there. You're sitting in your bedroom and you go, you don't even think about it. You know you have a couch. You know there is a couch out in your living room. You never give it a passing thought. You've walked by it and you've seen it 1,000 times, and the only time you think about your couch is when you're sitting on it or you have a guest over. The end. You do not ever sit in your bedroom and go, do I have a couch? Because you know it's there, you've seen it, it's 100%, it has been there. That is the law of attraction in a nutshell. That's the level of belief that they're talking about. And you don't check on it. You know it's there. So the law of attraction is you know that you have a new job. You know it. And you're like, well, Jason, but here's the thing. I have to show up to my old job and keep working there. But I have to believe that I have a new job, the job I really want, on the other side of town. And so if I truly believe that, but then I get in my car in the morning and I drive to my old job and I walk in the building, it's not my new job. How do I combine those two realities? Am I going to end up like Barry? It's weird, right? It is very, very weird. Trust me. And I don't have all the answers. But I know that I've used the law of attraction, and I've used... What was that tip? I gave a tip recently about money on the podcast, where I said... What was it? I don't even remember what the tip was, because I was just doing it. I thought of it, and then I just did it automatically for a while. Oh, yeah. So, let's say that you only have $50 in your account. And you're thinking, I gotta go to the store. I have to buy groceries. I only have $50. Oh, no. I don't have any money. My life sucks. All of that stuff is negative headed out to the universe. So what I would say to me is, I only have $50 in this account. I have way more money in a CD, and I have my savings I set up. I remember I set my savings up a couple years ago. I should check on that, see what the interest is. It doesn't matter. I'm sure it's obviously more. But right now I only have $50 in my checking account. I don't want to transfer anything from the savings account, so... I'll just pick up a couple things now. It's just too much trouble to transfer money, a godly amount of money in my savings account to my checking just to buy these few groceries. So you see how I'm First off, I'm going to tell you 100% it works. It works. Because in my brain, I am not saying I only have $50. I have no money. I'm saying I have access to $50 out of the fortune that I have, and I just don't want to transfer it over. It works. It works, guys. Seriously. Try that, because you're not having the combining realities at that point. You're looking at something, you're looking at your actual balance in this account, and you say, this is not all the money I have way more money than this. This is all the money that I have at 8 o'clock tonight, and so I'm going to run to the grocery store and just... But I mean, I could totally call up Jerry. Jerry could transfer some more stuff over tomorrow, but I'm not going to worry about it, and I don't even think about it. I buy what I can with that $50, because that's all that I have in that account. I just need to transfer over more stuff from Jerry. You create two realities that can work together in that way. I can't pay my heating bill. I don't really want to pay my heating bill. I'm trying to do that whole Wim Hof method. I'm going to see how cold I can get. Maybe I'll lose a little bit of... It works. It works. So that's what's interesting about this, is that you do have to be careful with some of it, because you may create such a jarring reality that you leave your house and you're hit with this overwhelming depression because you know that you're going to your old job, the job you hate, and you spent 8 hours the day before imagining the new job. But the second you walk out that door, you're hit with that wave of depression and that realization that you don't have that new job. I believe that can set back your goal. That can actually set you back from your goal. I know this show, the podcast, the numbers go up when I don't check the numbers. When I check the numbers all the time, the numbers don't go up. The number of downloads don't go up. The number of subscribers don't go up. Because I would go, the show's going really well. Then I look at the numbers and I'm like, it's okay. But then I stop checking my numbers for a couple weeks and it blows up. So I actually wanted to cover one more story about the law of attraction. And it's kind of the same thing, but it's different enough that I don't want to gloss over it. So we're going to save that for another episode. We're not going to do it this week. I don't want to just do the law of attraction stuff. That's funny I say that. It's not necessarily true. I don't want to turn this podcast into a law of attraction podcast. But, and we'll wrap it up like this, because I think this is super interesting. You'll see a little bit of how this can work. I've thought in the past of doing a separate weekly, or maybe even just twice a month podcast about law of attraction, about talking about law of attraction, how it works, how it's worked for me, pitfalls to avoid, and things like that. And I've thought about that. I've really thought about that podcast. But you know what stops me from doing it? I tell myself, well, I probably shouldn't do a law of attraction podcast until I'm actually successful using the law of attraction. Like, it would be ridiculous if a guy did a law of attraction podcast and it just flopped. I'd want to have a standing, I'd want to have a reputation and be successful, and then do a podcast showing, hey, the reason I became successful was because of the law of attraction. But do you see the problem with that logic? I'm saying I don't want to do a law of attraction podcast until I'm successful. What I should be doing is doing the law of attraction podcast because I already am successful. And in fact, I'm successful enough that I can do a podcast about it. I mean, that's the difference. That's the difference. If I tell myself I don't want to do a law of attraction podcast until I've used it to such a degree that I'm very successful, I'm telling myself I'm not successful right now. I'm not successful enough to do a podcast about a subject I'm very passionate about. I'm saying I have to wait until X, Y, and Z happen before I do that podcast. What I should do is do the podcast, start a separate podcast tomorrow. Because I'm already successful at law of attraction. Because I believe it so much, that it works so much that I'm willing to do a podcast about it. That's the difference of believing it already has happened and looking and going, it hasn't happened yet. It's fascinating. I love the law of attraction, and I see all those pitfalls, and I fall into them all the time. But that's not what we were talking with Barry. Barry was having a pretty hard time dealing with all this stuff. And I believe that wasn't law of attraction's fault. I don't think it helped. It probably made an existing problem worse, but I don't think it was the sole cause of it. But what I want to talk about next time we cover law of attraction, I think we'll do it next week, is I have a story about a man who actually could manifest what he wanted. It's a totally bizarre story because he manifested what he wanted, but it always turned into a monkey paw situation. It gave him what he wanted, but the worst possible outcome of his vision. It's fascinating stuff, but we'll talk about that on another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today.